Masechet Sotah Daf Mem Bav, continuing the procedure of Igla Arufa, the Mishnah teaches, Nifteru Nizikne Yerushalayim V'alchu lehen. The elders from Jerusalem, the members of the Sanhedrin, they finished their job. They measured the city that's closest, and that's it. They can go back home. And now the elders of the city that's closest from that Beit Din, they will come and they will take over the rest of the procedure. The elders of that city have to go and bring a heifer from cattle that never did any labor and never pulled a yoke in its life. However, having a blemish is not a problem. So we're going to see a lot about this. We have to keep this straight. For an egla arufa, labor is a problem, no good, but blemish is okay. This is interesting because it's the exact opposite of a regular korban. Just to bring a korban of, some shilamim or whatever, it cannot have a blemish, but it's okay if it worked, right? You can work an animal, and then you can say, you know what, now I want to bring it as a korban. That's fine. That's the opposite of egla arufa. The third thing we're going to compare to them is para aduma. Para aduma is the most stringent. It can have no blemish, and also can never have done any labor. And we'll see this in the Pesukim. Well, we'll learn one from the other. Things that we can learn, what we can't learn. Okay, so egla arufa, it's okay if it has a blemish, but labor is not permitted. Moridin otal lenachal etan. We take it and we bring it to a stream of etan. What does that mean? Etan kemashmal kasher. It means that it's powerful. We bring it to a powerful stream, the one that has a strong flow of water. Afal pishen etan kasher. But b'di'avad, if it doesn't have a strong flow of water, it's just a trickle, just a small stream, then it's permitted also to do it in that place. And unlike regular shechita, which is from the front of the neck, here we take a kupitz, a cleaver like this, and we break it at the neck. Oref means the back of the neck. And that place where the egla arufa is killed is forever prohibited to grow on. You can't plant seeds and work that land. You can, however, use it to comb flax or to cut stones there. You could do other labor there, but not plant. Pasuk says so. Zikne otah ha'ir rochasin et yedehen b'mayim b'makom arifa shel agra ve'omrim yadenu lo shafechu et hadam hazeh ve'anenu lo ra'u. And then the elders of that city would wash their hands with water in that place, and they would say, our hands did not spill this blood, our eyes did not see anything wrong that happened that we would be guilty or could have done something about to prevent. Now, why do I have to say this? Would we think otherwise, that the elders are all murderers, that they actually came out and violently killed this victim? Rather, this person who's the murder victim did not come to us, and we ignored him and left him without giving him food. Maybe he was in need of food and he came to us, and then we didn't take care of him, and then he had to go and put himself into a dangerous situation, to go and to find food, to beg for food, to collect, or to have to travel in a dangerous place. And in that way, we would be indirectly responsible for his murder. Or maybe we saw him and we didn't give him a company. We saw that there's something wrong with him. He needs help. He needs someone to accompany him, and we didn't take care of him. So that's what they have to say, because there is a possibility that elders might be busy with other things, might have overlooked this poor person. So that's what they have to say. Our hands are not responsible. The point is that they and everybody will learn the extent of responsibility that we have to take. If there is a person in need, we have to make sure that we take care of the person. Otherwise, the situation gets worse, and people take the law into their own hands. People get themselves into dangerous situations, and that is our responsibility if something bad happens, if we could have prevented it from the to begin with. והכהנים אומרים, כפר לעמך ישראל אשר פדית השם, ואל תיתן דם נקי בקרב עמך ישראל. The Kohanim that are there say, Hashem, forgive your people Israel, who you have redeemed, and suffer not innocent blood to remain in the midst of your people. Right? This person who was killed is innocent. We don't know where the murderer is. Usually, if you find the murderer, then by giving capital punishment to the murderer, then that punishment will atone for the blood that's spilt. Now, we don't have that. Instead, we can bring this eglah arufa as a kind of symbolic substitute, and its blood that's spilt there will be the atonement. And therefore, we don't want this violence to spread. We don't want punishment to spread. These are the last three words of that same pasuk. But it's clear that the Kohanim do not need to say these words, because these words are not in quotation marks. They're already, the Kohanim say, right, make sure that them not be innocent blood spilled in Israel. And then nikapeh lahem hadam, and then the blood shall be forgiven to them. This is the narrator of the Torah concluding, and right, not the words of the Kohanim, but the Torah picking up again and saying, and by doing all this process and the Kohanim saying it, then indeed the blood shall be forgiven for them. So that's why the Kohanim, it's not part of their statement. Rather, it's Ruach HaKodesh, it's rather the Torah that is announcing, if you do all this properly, then the blood will be forgiven, will be atoned for you. That's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara is going to come and ask. So we learned that for eglah arufa, a blemish is fine. Eglah arufa can have a blemish. But maybe we should learn a kal vachomer from para aduma, where a blemish is not okay. Ma para aduma she'en hashanim poslin ba, mum posel ba. Para aduma has a leniency in that it can be any age. And yet, a blemish makes it no good. So we could learn that eglah arufa has to be only 1 or 2 years old. So that means it's more stringent. And all the more so, blemishes should be no good. If blemishes are no good in paraduma, then blemishes should invalidate also eglah arufa. Right, so that would seem like it would be a good derivation, but it's not true. Shane hatam damar kira asher en bah mum. Regarding paraduma, says there is no mum in it. Ba, particularly, that's a limiting word. Ba mum posel ven mum posel be'eglah. Only there for paraduma is a blemish, make it invalid, but not for eglah arufa. Good. Now, ela me'ata lo yuhu sha'ar avodot poslot ba. Wait a second. Now you opened up a can of worms. Once you're going to say that the word ba limits a law to only one particular case, that context, well, the word ba also happens to appear in eglah arufa. Here, so the word ba, where he says is said regarding the eglah arufa, that it says it did no work, and work was not done in it. Now, how do we know that work is no good for paraduma? We actually learn it from a kal vachomer. If over here you see that eglah arufa, you cannot do any work, and yet eglah arufa has a leniency, various leniencies that a blemish is okay. Then for paraduma, where a blemish is no good, all the more so you can't do any work, and we would need that because regarding paraduma, if you look carefully, it says, we call it para aduma timima asher lo ala aleha all. All it says by para aduma is that it didn't carry a yoke. A yoke is this. This is put a yoke on it so that it can pull things. So for para aduma, if I had just a pasuk, I would say that the only problem is carrying a yoke. But maybe other work, it's okay for paraduma to do. So, no, we learn from a kal vachomer, eglah arufa can't do any work, and so all the more so paraduma cannot do any work. But once you say that the word ba limits a law to that context only, then I would say other avodot should be no good in eglah arufa, but I'm not going to learn, it's only eglah arufa, only ba is a problem. I'm not going to derive that for paraduma, other work is a problem. So now, what am I going to do? Alama amar Rav Yehuda amar Rav. Hiniach aleha uda shel sakin pesula ubeeglah ad shetimshoch. Rav taught that work is prohibited. All forms of work are prohibited in both scenarios. If someone even just puts a bundle of sacks on a cow, it cannot be used as a para aduma. Regarding egla, it actually has to pull something, right? Not just if you tie it to something, it actually has to pull it, right? So you see, all these forms of work are prohibited in para aduma. So it's not true that para aduma is prohibited only in carrying a yoke. It is prohibited in all ways. But if you have the word ba, then that's going to limit all forms of work only to egla rufa. And how are you going to learn that para aduma is prohibited in all forms of work? The answer is shane para dialfinan all me'egla. It says the word all in both cases. Here, last word, asher lo aleha all min para aduma. And for egla rufa, it also says asher lo mashecha be'ol. So that's how I'm going to learn it from this gezerah shava. So that's how I know it. So now we're okay. But here's the problem. All mipara. Once you open up a gezerah shava, now I can use it the other way to learn that just like for para aduma, blemishes make it no good. So too, I should say blemishes make an egla no good to use for egla arufa. Oh, but here the pasuk says ba only in para aduma is a blemish a problem and not an egla arufa. Okay, yeah, but if you're going to have ba and say it's an exclusionary word, we're going in circles, then be'egla name ketib ba, also in egla arufa says ba, that all forms of work are prohibited only there, and that would negate the all gezerah shava. So our answer is hahu, the ba. Regarding egla rufa, mi ba'ileh. I need that for a separate purpose. So therefore, the word ba in egla rufa is coming to exclude something else. So we're about to see, but it's not excluding para aduma. So that's why there's no exclusionary word. And so if there's no exclusionary word by egla rufa, we will learn from egla rufa to para aduma that just as all work is prohibited for egla rufa, all work is prohibited for para aduma as well. However, the other way around, we don't learn that because para aduma has a blemish, all blemishes are no good, but there it says ba, and that ba is not used for anything else, and therefore we do not learn from para aduma to egla rufa. If for egla rufa, blemishes are okay. Now we're going to see, what does that ba in egla rufa come to exclude? Come to exclude lemeute kadashim de la ba, right? And egla rufa comes to exclude the meute kadashim de la pasla behu avoda. It comes to exclude regular sacrificial animals where work is the animal doing labor does not invalidate it to be a korban. And so egla rufa only there is all works are prohibited. And also in para aduma, work is prohibited for the animal, but for korbanot, that's okay. That's what the ba is coming to do. Now, sakada techamina lete bekav chomer. Without this ba, I would have thought the following kav chomer ma'igla she'en mum posel ba avoda poselet ba. For egla rufa, a blemish is okay, so it's lenient, and yet labor makes it invalid. Kadashim she'mum poselet bahen and odin she'avoda poselet bahem. So then, sacrificial animals where there is a blemish, all the more so. I would have assumed that labor makes an animal no good for a sacrifice, and that's why I need a ba to say no. Labor is only a problem for egla rufa. Now this kal vachomer, we could have refuted it anyway, so we wouldn't need ba because we could refute the kal vachomer. And how could we refute the kal vachomer? Regarding egla rufa, it has a limitation that's only good for 1 or 2 years. Old. Atu kadashim mi leka de pasle behu shanim. Yeah, but that's not a pircha because for kodashim there are also many sacrificial animals that have to be 1 year old or 2 years old. So that would not be a pircha. And so we need the word ba in particular to teach us regarding those kodashim where there is an age requirement, since there's an age requirement regarding those korbanot, and there's also an age requirement regarding egla rufa, so that equals out. And because that equals out, I would otherwise use a kal vachomer to say that if egla rufa, work is no good, all the more so korbanot, work would be no good for them. That's why it says ba, to limit that law, that stringency, only to egla arufa. So that's what I do with the word ba. Okay, now on this assumption, wait, is this actually the source that sacrificial animals you cannot use for, that you cannot have them, that work is not, it does not invalidate sacrificial animals? Are we really learning it from that word ba in egla arufa, that limiting word? Mehatam nafka. It's actually, we have another derivation for that, so we don't need that ba. And if we undo that ba, we're going to unravel the whole argument we've had so far. Where can we learn? Averet o shavur o harutz o yabelot o garav o yalefet lo takribu ele laHashem. The pasuk says that any animal that's blind, broken, maimed, wart, scabbed, scurvy, you cannot offer these. Sounds like a pretty comprehensive list. We can infer that only these are a problem, but you can sacrifice something that performed labor. So we can learn from here that sacrificial animals can have performed labor. So why do we need the pasuk? Istirich. So why do we need the ba? Istirich sakada tachamina hanemilehecha da'avad behen avodat eter al avodat isur ema litasru siricha. If I had only this derivation, then I would say only if they did permitted work. But what if they did prohibited work? What kind of work is prohibited for an animal? Working on Shabbat. An owner, a Jewish owner, is not allowed to work an animal on Shabbat. Or other work like kilayim is prohibited. So I might say that if it did permitted work, you can use as sacrifice. But if this animal violated Shabbat, then it's not allowed to be used as a sacrifice. And that's why I need ba also. I need two derivations to teach me this added law. Okay, hold on, I already have another derivation even for that. Another pasuk that says, it says, even the non-Jew who wants to bring a sacrifice, non-Jews are allowed to bring certain sacrificial animals. They did throughout history. They want to show their goodwill, their friendship to the Jewish people. That's fine. But they cannot bring anything that has a blemish in it. Mikol ele, any of these blemishes. So it says, ele, these blemishes are no good. But we can infer from here that if an animal did work, then that's okay. So I actually have two derivations that were animals that did work are okay. One for permitted work, one for prohibited work. So what do I need the ba for? No, even with those two derivations, I would only know that it's permitted to use an animal that had worked before it was consecrated. Now I can consecrate it and use it for a sacrifice. That's fine. But what if I already consecrated it and then did work with it? I might say, I might have thought that that would be prohibited because now it's consecrated, so it can't do any work. So that's why I need the word ba, by gladufa, to say labor makes an animal no good for gladufa, ba, only that, and it's permitted for using it for sacrificial animals. Even one that was already sanctified can be used for a can be used as a sacrifice. And now we're going to get further into the statement that we already quoted. Gufa, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Hiniach aleha uda shel sakin pistula obegla ad shetimshoch. Rav, we're going back to that statement that he said, ruled that for para aduma, even the smallest amount of labor, just putting a bundle of sacks on it, already makes it no good. That's considered labor. And that's actually more stringent, parado is more stringent than egla arufa. Egla arufa, if it's just carrying something, that's not called labor. It's only called labor when it actually pulls a plow or something, a wagon, and does actual work. So this is interesting because egla arufa is actually the main source. That's where it says it cannot do any work. And so you think that will be more stringent regarding work. And regarding para aduma, it only says that it can't carry an all, but it doesn't say anything about just carrying other things. Yet the halacha paraduma is more stringent. So we're going to have to clarify what's going on here. Metibe all enli ela all shar abodot minayin amarta kavachomer uma egla she'en mum posel ba shar abodot poslot ba para shemum posel ba enodin she'ar avodot poslim ba. So we have a question, because how could they be different? After all, it says the word all regarding paraduma. So I only know that paraduma cannot carry a yoke. What about other types of labor? Well, I'm going to learn it from a kal vachomer, from egla arufa. Egla arufa has a leniency in that blemishes are okay, and yet all labor is no good. So paraduma, where blemishes are no good, all the more so labor should be no good. So if that's the case, then the egla arufa is the source. So the consequence, the paraduma, should not be any more stringent. Now, regarding this kal vachomer, v'im nafshach lomar nemar kan ol v'nemar lalan ol. We don't have to learn it from the kal vachomer. We can also learn it from a gezerah shava. It says all here and the word all there. Ma leholan shar avodot poslot ba, af kan shar avodot poslot ba. Just like regarding egla arufa, all labor is prohibited, so to paraduma, all labor is prohibited. All right, now all that is the braita, and it gives two different derivations. Interesting, both of them are learning from egla arufa, which would indicate that it should be the same. But before we answer that question, we're going to analyze this very baraita, because first it gives a kal vachomer, and it says, and if you want, meaning if there's something wrong with the kal vachomer, then I'll give you a gezerah shava. So what does that mean? What would be wrong with the kal vachomer? What does it mean that if you want, you could offer a non-kal vachomer gezerah shava? Maybe you'll say I can refute the kal vachomer. Ma'ala egla sheken shanim poslot ba. Egla arufa has a stringency in that it can only be 1 or 2 years old, whereas paraduma can be older. Or we can have a refutation from korbanot, where blemishes are no good there, and yet labor is good. So that shows that just because one is more stringent here doesn't necessarily mean that the other will be stringent. It's true for egla arufa, it has a stringency that blemishes are no good, that are okay. Has that work is no good, but blemishes are okay. Korbanot is the opposite, other way around. So you can have one way, you can have the other way. So you can't use it as a kal vachomer. So those are two ways that you could refute the kal vachomer. Now, nemar kan ol, nemar lehalan ol. Ma lehalan shar avodot, af kan shar avodot. So that's why, if you don't like the kal vachomer, then we have the gezerah shava. Says the word all in both places. From egla arufa, labor is not allowed. Therefore, paraduma, you can't do labor and then use that animal. Now, mimakom shebata, ma lehalan ad shetimshoch. Afkan ad shetimshoch. But now, here we're stating the main question against Rav. Just like with egla arufa, it's only if you pull it. So too, for paraduma, should be only if you pull it. Where did Rav get this idea from, that paraduma is more stringent, that even if it's just carrying something and not even pulling it, it would be prohibited? That's a big question, and the answer is Tana'ehi. Actually, this issue is subject to a machloket of Tana'im, and the braita that we just saw is one Tana, but there is another Tana. There are some that learn the prohibition that paraduma cannot do work from egla, egla arufa, as we just saw. But there are others that learn the prohibition from within the verses of paraduma itself. And that, Rav will follow that, which will actually be more stringent. How do we see that? Ditanya ol. Enli ela ol. Sharabodat menayin. For paraduma says that it cannot carry a yoke. I will only know a yoke. What about any other type of labor? Look at this long phrase. Asher lo ala aleha. You could stop right there, that it has nothing on it. So mikol makom. So we could separate out the word all and read just that long phrase, and from there learn all types of labor. If you're going to learn all types of labor, then why would you add the word all? Just say you can't carry anything. All posel ben bishat avodah, ben shelo bishat avodah, shar avodot en poslot ela bishat avodah. Because there is a difference. Carrying a yoke, that makes that cow unfit for use, whether it's carrying it during a time of labor or whether not during a time of labor. If you're just taking the yoke and they're just trying it on, it's not actually doing any work with it, it's using it somewhere else, then it's still no good. Whereas other items, other types of work, let's say you just you want to walk it through the threshing floor because you want it to get to the other side where there's some food over there, and while it's walking through, it happens to step on some grains and thresh, but that's not actually doing work. It just happens to be walking. So only for a yoke does that, where holding a yoke will make it prohibited all the time. But other types of labor will only prohibit if it's actually at the time of labor, like this is threshing floor time, and then that kind of work make it prohibited. But if it's doing something, but it's not at the time of labor, and that's not the main thing that you're doing with it, then you could still use that animal. Or if it's carrying something, but not as labor. So that's the difference. That's why it says Asher lo ala aleha, and it says all. You see, from this derivation itself, we don't need a gladufa for this. Just from the word paraduma, and according to this derivation, anything that it carries, you want to help use it to carry your backpack as you're walking, as you're traveling, then that would make it prohibited, even if it's holding something light. That is an extra prohibition. Even if it's just carrying it, even if it's not walking, even if it's not pulling. That's where we see that Rav would follow that Tana, and that's why he is stringent. Now, ve'ema shelo ala aleha kelal all perat kelal uprat en beklal ela ma shebeperat all in midi acharin ala. Hold on. If you have these two phrases here, and you said asher lo ala aleha, that's a big phrase, a generalization. And all is a detail, an example. So then this would seem to fit into the category of klal uprat, in which we always go by the second of the terms, and so the general is only giving an intro, but really the law only includes what the detail. So that means only if a cow carries a yoke can it not be used for paraduma, but if it carries anything else, then that would be totally fine. Why don't we learn it like that? And the answer is the word asher, right? The word asher here, ribuyahu. Asher is an expansive word, and so that says this is not a klal uprat. This derivation, interpretation that we had regarding paraduma, there are others that have this braita that applies it to a gladufa in the same way. All, en liela all, shadavodot minayin. For a gladufa, it says a yoke. So I know if it carries a yoke, it's no good to use for a gladufa. What about other types of work? Tamud lomar asher lo ubad ba. The sukkah says that it did no work. Mikol makom, any type of work. Imken matamud lomar all. So if it's going to say no work at all, why bother mentioning a yoke? All posel ben b'shat avodah, ben shel b'shat avodah, shar avodat, and posin el b'shat avodah. Same thing. That all is more stringent in that an animal carries a yoke no matter what, whether at the time of performing a labor or just carrying it around for fun. That would be prohibited, whereas other types of work only at the time of actually doing work, but if it happens to be carrying things, but not for the purpose of, not at the time of work, then that would not make it prohibited to use for an egladufa. All pirat. Wait a second. If you have these two phrases, why not learn it as a klal uprat? If no work at all, klal. All is the detail. Klal uprat and baklal el mashabeprat. All in midiachrin Allah asher ribuyahi. And if it follows that structure, then you would say the generalization is only introducing the detail, and only carrying a yoke would be a problem. Nothing else would be a problem. That's why it says the word asher, which is a generalization. Amar Rabbi Abhu, ba'ai mineh Rabbi Yohanan. I asked a question to Rabbi Yohanan. Mishichat all bekama. When we said regarding ergla arufa, according to Rav, that you have to pull it somewhat. How much do you have to pull it in order for it to be prohibited, right? Do you have to walk 1 foot, 1 mile? Amali kimilo all. And he answered the size of an all of the yoke itself. That's how big. Does that mean its length or its width? It's pretty long, it has to cover the entire width of the animal, so it might be 2-3 feet long. Or is it the width? The width is just a few inches wide. So which one is it? So one rabbi said, and that was Rabbi Yaakov who said it. Rabbi Yochanan actually told me this, right? Maybe he didn't say it when he taught it to when Rabbi Abu asked, but he says Rabbi Yochanan says, I know, and he said Mishichat all l'rochbo tefach. It's the width of it, and the width of it is just 1 tefach, just a few inches. Okay. Velema tefach. Now, if he meant a tefach, why not just say tefach? Why say the size of a yoke? And then we have to wonder, well, the size of a yoke this way, that way? Just say tefach. Hakamash malan shiurade all tefach. He wanted to teach us, by the way, that the measurement of a yoke is a tefach. Now, even that, why you have to tell us the measurement of a yoke is a tefach? I can go and go to the store, go to the farm, and measure it myself. Why do I need to know that? For commercial transaction. If someone sells you a yoke and it's thinner than a tefach, then it's flimsy, and you can go back and say, "Hey, you sold me a faulty yoke." Right? The standard yoke has to be a tefach. And so it's important to know so that you can go return the item, and because it would be an invalid sale. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Shaul, mipnei ma amra Torah haveh egla banachal. Okay, now some of the symbolism of this very strange ceremony. Why do you have to take the egla rufa and bring it down to the stream? אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא יבוא דבר שלא עשה פירות ויערף במקום שאין עושה פירות ויכפר על מי שלא הניחו לעשות פירות. So we're going to take something that did not produce fruit, right? This heifer, it's young, only 1 or 2 years old, so it has not yet given birth. And we're going to break its neck at a place where you cannot grow things. A stream, you can't grow things in a stream. Nothing will grow there. And that, why do that? To atone for the victim who no longer will have fruit. Now, what does that mean? He will no longer have fruit, this victim. My perot, maybe means he will have no children now that he's dead. And now he cannot have children anymore. And so we're going to do these two things that represent no future, no growth, in order to show the tragedy of this deceased, that not only he lost his life, but also the future lives that might have come from him. Now we ask, wait a second, what if the murder victim was old and he wasn't going to have children anymore, or he already did pidyav, or he's a eunuch and so he can't have children? So then this murder is not stopping him from having children. Then you'd say, don't do the egla rufa ceremony, or don't do it there. La mitzvot, right? It's not talking about children. It's talking about doing mitzvot, right? The perot, the fruit that a person does, are his good deeds that he can do in the world. And now that he was killed, he cannot do them anymore. And that's why we bring him to that place. Umodidin ota el nachal etan. We bring it to a stream that is a mighty stream, etan. Etan k'mashma'o kasher, means literally strong stream. Tenor banan, minayin etan shu kasher. How do we know that that's what it means? Shne'emar, etan moshabecha v'sim basela kinecha. It says, from etan is your dwelling place. Your nest is set in a rock. Right, a rock is a strong place. Etan is a strong place. This is, listen, mountains, God's lawsuit, and enduring rock, right, the foundations of the earth. So again, compared to rock, something strong. Other people say etan means old, an old stream, as it says, an ancient nation, a nation from old. So that would be a different interpretation. We use a cleaver and break its neck from the back. The reason, or the source, is that just like a chatat ta'of, a bird that various people bring as a chatat, is not, you don't do shechita as you would or normally do to a bird to make it a kosher bird for eating, but rather you break its neck, and so we learn it from there. And there may be also symbolism that this is a kind of a chatat. This is the egladufa also is a atonement for a sin that happened. Now that place where you do the egla arufa, you cannot use to work. You cannot work that land. It cannot be sown. It cannot be worked. So the pasuk says two things: it cannot be worked, it cannot be sown. Rabbi Yoshia says this means that it has not been worked. You have to go to an area, some land that nothing ever grew on it. No one ever planted anything there. In the past. Rabbi Yonatan Omer lehabar. Rabbi Yonatan says no, from then on. Doesn't matter if it was used or not in the past. From then on, once that place you have to mark, no one is allowed to plant anything here forever. Rava Amar lehabad kula amala plige dichtiv lo yizareya. Rava explains this machlok and says, actually, everyone, even Rabbi Yoshia, agrees that you cannot work that land in the future, because that's what this word says. Lo yizareya. There's no ambiguity about that word. It's talking about the future. Ki plige l'shavar. Rabbi Yoshia sabar mikatav lo yiubad. So Rabbi Yoshia says, doesn't say yiubad, that it will be worked. It says lo ye'aved. So he thinks that means past. Rabbi Yonatan mikativ asher lo ne'avad. Rabbi Yonatan says, yeah, but the normal past tense would be ne'avad. And it doesn't say that. So therefore he thinks that ye'aved means the future. Rabbi Yoshia asher l'she'avar mashma. Rabbi Yoshia thinks that the word asher makes it so this is an ambiguous word, but Rabbi Yoshia thinks that the word asher adding to it, that sounds like has not been worked. So he thinks that the asher makes it sound like a past tense. Rabbi Yonatan asher dibuyahi. Rabbi Yonatan says, I need the word asher for a different midrash that we're going to see in a minute. Okay, so that's the end of that machloket. Whether for sure you can't use that land ever again in the future. The question is, can you use land that was plowed, that was sown in the past? Now, even though you can't do field work there, you are allowed to comb flax or cut stones there. So this is based on this following braita. It says that you cannot work it or work not be worked or not sown. I only know about sowing seeds. How about other types of work? It says don't do any work. So it means any work. So if it says no work at all, why bother saying that it can't be sown if you can't do any work? So it's giving you a comparison. Just like sowing, right? Planting seeds in the ground is unique in that it has to do with the labor in the ground itself. So you can't do anything in the ground itself, right? Digging, plowing, anything that you do in the ground is prohibited. But other things that are just done on the ground, they don't need the ground, just happens to be on top of it, like combing flax, cutting stones, that you can do on the land. You can do anything on the land. You just can't use something. You can't use the land in itself. Now, since we have two phrases here, I understand the derivation you brought, but why not say that this is a klal uprat, any work, and then a particular kind of work, klal uprat en baklal elamashe beprat, and that would mean that we follow only what's in the detail, only planting seeds, that's the only problem, but any other type of work you want to do, even in the land, you want to build dig ditches and things, then you could do it. Asher ribuyahu. Asher, the word asher is an inclusive word and comes to include more things. So that's why any field work is prohibited there, but any labor that you do just on top of the land is permitted. And that's the word asher, and that's what we're talking about here. Rabbi Yonatan says, I use the word asher as a ribuya, and that's why he doesn't use it to indicate a past tense. Next, ziknei ha'ir rochasin yedehen. Tunu Rabbanan v'chol ziknei ha'ir ahi kerubim el ha'chalad yidchasu et yedehem al ha'igra ha'arufa b'nachal. And so here we quote the full pasuk, right? All of the elders that are there, that are near there, and near to the slain, will wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley. Now, why do we need the ha'arufa? Just say they'll wash their hands over the heifer. Why do I have to say the heifer whose neck was broken? I know which heifer. Rather means at the spot where its neck was broken. So it's not just that they're doing it about it, they have to do it right there on the spot. And the question that the Mishnah asked, what, do we think that the elders themselves went in cold blood and they cut this guy's neck? Rather, that's not that this man came to us. Now, who is the man? It could be talking about the murder victim, as we explained before, right? That this murder victim did not come to us saying, I need food, and we left him and we didn't take care of him. Or he said, listen, I'm going on a journey, and so I'm going on a journey. He needs someone to accompany him because it could be dangerous. And say, well, no, we don't care about it. And we let him we allowed himself to go. We allowed that guy to go and put himself into a dangerous situation, and we didn't help out. So we would be responsible for that. The Talmud Yerushalmi says is actually talking about the murderer. The murderer came to us and said he needs food or he needs something, and we didn't help him. So what happened? He went and he mugged someone, or he went and did something dangerous. He's the one that needed accompaniment to make sure that he would not do anything wrong, right? He had some problems. We're suspicious of him. He's a violent guy. He's a person that can't be trusted. So we didn't take care of him. So either way, right, it's the elders that are responsible for all the kinds of things that happen in the city. Tanya, Hayar Rabbi Meir Omer, Kofin leLeviyah, shesachar haLeviyah, en la shiur, shneimar veyid'u hashomerim ish yoseh min ha'ir ve'yomedu lo, hare'enu na et mevo ha'ir ve'asinu imecha chesed. So now that we mentioned that the elders have to say, we did not see this guy and not accompany him, we're going to go into a long agadah about the importance of accompanying someone, different kinds of people, right? Like a guest, you want to, or someone traveling, you should accompany them and make sure that they are safe. You see an elder walking, right? Accompany the elder because to make sure that they don't fall down, that they're okay, especially if it's in a not a safe place or bumpy, all that. Okay, so what do we see here? Rabbi Meir says, we coerce, there is coercion regarding accompaniment. In other words, someone who's not want to accompany another, he's required to do so. Because why do we require him? Because the reward for accompanying someone, you can't even count what that reward is. Now, where do we learn this from? It's a story in Shoftim, when the Israelites were laying siege to the city of Bet El, and they wanted to find a way in. And so the watchman saw a man coming out of the city, someone from Bethel, he knows the city, and they asked him, can you show us an entrance into the city so that we can go and conquer it? He's the one he lives in the city. He's a Canaanite. And they asked him if he could help. And this Canaanite did. He showed them, he said, go that way. So what did they do good for him? The Bnei Israel went and they killed the whole city, but that man and his family, they let him go free. So you see that the reward, how can you calculate that reward? The reward for accompanying someone and showing them the right way to go, so that they don't get lost, so that they succeed in where they want to go. Now this guy that they allowed to live, they destroyed his city. So he went and he built another city and called it Luz, and it's still there ad hayom hazeh, whenever that is. So that means it was around for a long time. So what did it live through? Tanya, he luz shesovin bat techelet, he luz shebasen tchile velo bilbela nebuchadnezzar velo echiba, vaf malach hamavet en lo reshut la'avor ba. This is luz that they know how to dye blue techelet. So they had this knowledge, which is a very good commodity, right? They could make a good economy from knowing, having those snails, knowing the atmosphere over there, the sunlight, the moisture. That's the perfect place to make techelet. Doesn't mean that's the only place you have to make techelet there, because nowadays we make techelet in lots of places. But rather, they had a special spot they know how to make techelet, and that was a great blessing for them. Also, when Sancheriv came from the Assyrian Empire, and he took populations and moved them all around so they wouldn't rebel, but Luz, he kept them there. And Nebuchadnezzar, even though he destroyed lots of places, he left Luz there. And even the angel of death has no permission to go into Luz. So Luz, nobody dies in Luz. Ela zekenim sheba bizman shedatan kasa alehen yosin chusa choma vehen metim. Rather, since the angel of death cannot go in, the elders, they know it's time when it's their time to die, they leave the city and then they die. But they have a peaceful life and no one bothers them. There's no problem of enemies or anything. Even though they're from the place of Luz, we should not call them losers, right? They are actually winners. They have great reward. Why all that? Because their ancestor helped out and pointed out the way, accompanied Bnei Israel one time, and then forevermore they have great things coming to them. Now we can learn from this. This Kanaani, whom he didn't even speak, he didn't even walk. And so we're going to see, how did he show them? He didn't do it explicitly. Like when a person, you don't want to say something because you'll get in trouble. He's, after all, from the city. He's a Canaanite. So he didn't want to say anything explicitly. So he only did a hint to which way they should go. And nevertheless, he caused himself to be saved and his descendants for all generations. So if someone actually does a full accompaniment with one's legs, and you take someone and you escort them all the way to safety, all the more so, how much greater will be that reward. Now we wonder, well, how did this Kanaani show them if he didn't say anything and he didn't speak? Chizkiah said he twitched his lips. He went like, go over there. Rabbi Yochanan says he just pointed, but he didn't say anything. There's a braita that supports Rabbi Yochanan that says because this Kanaani pointed with his finger. It's a version, another version of the braita we just saw. So, and it says pointing with the finger, and so that would support Rabbi Yochanan that he pointed. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi Hamalech b'derech ve'en lo leviya yasok b'torah shenemar ki leviatchen hem l'roshecha v'anakim legargirotecha. If you're walking on the way, walking on the highways and roads in those days was always dangerous. There's always pirates and muggers and all kinds of problems and animals. And so if you're there alone, which is not a good idea, but if you do find yourself there, then learn Torah. Everybody knows Torah by heart, right? So just recite Torah, recite Mishnayot, because Torah will be a grace around your head, chain around your neck, and that will serve as protection. Okay, amazing derasha. He says because Paro at the time of Avraham accompanied Avraham for just 4 steps. As it says, Paro told his men concerning Avraham, and they brought him on his way, and his wife, and all that they had. So Paro said, right, accompany Avraham. And because of that, and he walked 4 steps, that's it. Because of that, his descendants, Abraham's descendants, had to be slaves to Paro, a later Paro, for 400 years. So that's the reward that Paro got. For a small 4 steps, he got to be rule over Abraham's descendants for 400 years. Right? If Abraham knew that, he should have said, "It's okay. I'll find the way on my own." אמר רב יהודה אמר רב, כל המלווה את חברו 4 אמות בעיר, אינו ניזוק. רבינה ילווה רבה ביצחק 400 בעיר, מתה לידי הזקה ve'itzil. Rav says, anyone who accompanies his friend for 4 amot in the city will not be, harm will not come to him. Cities were also dangerous places, lots of people, pickpockets, all kinds of crazy people. And Rav said, in fact, one time, Ravina, I said, accompanied Rava 4 cubits, and I almost was harmed, but I was saved, right? Why? Because I was accompanying. So it's good to walk with other people. Okay, Tenu Rabbanan, harav letamid ad ibura shel ayir. If a student, if a teacher is accompanying a student, even a teacher should accompany a student, right? Students going back home, right? Give him company. So a teacher accompanies a student. He only has to do it until the edge of the city. Whereas chaver lechaver atichum Shabbat, 2 colleagues, you have to go beyond the city to the Shabbat boundary, 2,000 amot. Tamid lerav en lo shiur. But if a student is accompanying his rabbi home, he should go all the way home. There is no distance too far. Vekama amarav shashat ad parsa. No, not literally no shiur. There is a shiur. Who knows how long he lives, how far he lives? A parsa, 1 parsa. That's plenty. Vela amaran ela rabosh muvhak. Aval muvhak shlosha parsot. But that's only talking about a teacher, one of his teachers. But if it's his main teacher that he learns most of his Torah from, then it's triple. He has to walk him 3 parsaot. Rav Kahana you get the benefit of being able to talk to your teacher on the way also, right? I know I've learned many, many things by giving my teachers lifts and walking with them. Rav Kana ila al viye Rav Shimi bar Ashem mipum nahara ad be sinita de Babel. And here's some example of Kana accompanied Rav Shimi from Pumnara all the way till the grove of Babel. That's a long way. Kimatu hatam amar lev adai damritu hanesinita de Babel mishne adam harishon itnehu. And look, sure enough, see, while you're walking on the way, you can learn all kinds of things. As Rav Kana said, is it true that you said that the palms of Babel, these date palms here, have been here since the time of Adam Rishon? I remember you saying something like that. And Amar le adkiran milta. Rav Shimi says, I forgot about that. Yeah, you reminded me of something I said, and here's what I said. Tamar bi Yosef bi Chanina mai dichti be'eres lo abad ba ba'avad ba ish lo yashab sham Adam. Yirmiyah is talking about the great faith of Bnei Israel, that they went and followed Hashem in a land that no man passed through, where no man dwelt, no man's land, and Bnei Israel followed faithfully. So now what does this pasuk mean? If no one ever passed through there, then obviously no one sat there. If no one was there at all, how could you say anyone sat? If no one sat there, no one passed by there. So why is the doubling of the language here? Adam harishon lishuv nityasheva el shelo gazar aleha adam rishon lo nityasheva. Rather, what it means that this ish here is not just anyone, but rather a particular person. It's talking about Adam harishon, and any land that Adam harishon decided should be settled was settled. But lands that Adam harishon did not say should be settled were not settled. So that's why some lands are settled, some lands are desolate, and that's what this pasuk means. That even these desolate lands that Adam said were not, that's even Bnei Israel were willing to go through them, and that shows their great faith. Rav Mordechai al viyeh Rav Asher me'hagronya ad bekifi v'amar la ad bedura. Rav Mordechai accompanied him, Rav Asher, from Hagronya to Bekifi, and some say all the way till Bedura, even farther. Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Meir kol sheno melaveh umitlaveh kilu shofech damim shel male livuhu anshe Yericho lerisha lo gira dubim latinokos nemar vayal misham bet el v'hu ole baderech unarim ketanim yasu min ha'ir vayitkalesu bo v'yomeru lo ale kereach ale kereach. Rabbi Yochanan says, anyone who does not accompany someone or agree to be accompanied. Even if someone's accompanying you, say, no, I don't want you to accompany, I refuse, go home. No, if someone wants to accompany you, let them. Because if you don't let them, or if you don't do the accompanying, it's as if you are a murderer. Because if something goes wrong, and either your friend is killed or you're killed while you're going, so it's your fault. You should accompany others, let others accompany you. It's much safer. Why? How do we see this? Because Elisha, if the people of Yericho had accompanied Elisha, then he would not have incited the bears to attack the children. As the pasuk says, that when Elisha left Yericho, he went to Bet El. And as he was going on the way, some ne'arim ketanim, some young lads, came from the city, and they were mocking him and saying, go up, Baldy, go up, Baldy. And he got upset, and he called upon the bears, and they killed him. Now, if the people of Yericho had went and accompanied Elisha, then they would have taken care of the situation and said, kids, go home. This is a holy person, right? They would have intervened, and this terrible tragedy would not have happened. So, who's responsible? It's the people of Yericho that did not accompany the prophet Elisha. Certainly, they should have accompanied him a long way, and then that would have prevented this terrible murder. Okay, since we brought up this story, we're going to go on a long Agadah about this story, but we'll leave the rest of that Agadah for tomorrow. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.